I should have paid attention the first time she smiled too hard while suggesting we sign a prenuptial agreement for peace of mind. The way she said it, light, teasing, almost playful, made it sound harmless, like she was joking about insurance policies and rainy days. At the time, I admired her practicality. Now I recognize it as the first tremor before the collapse. My name is Marcus Ellington. I'm 46 years old, and over the last 15 years I built 4 high-performance training studios across the coastal corridor from nothing but a leased warehouse, second-hand equipment, and an obsession with discipline. We serve over 3,000 active members. The brand carries weight. The revenue is steady. I'm not a billionaire, but I'm stable in the way that attracts opportunists if you're not careful. Vanessa Corbin was 42 when all of this happened. She managed digital marketing for my main location and occasionally led specialty conditioning classes. Charismatic, strategic, the kind of woman who could command attention without raising her voice. We dated nearly 4 years, engaged for 10 months. The ceremony was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon in late spring. Intimate but elegant. 80 guests. Nothing extravagant, just curated. The night before that ceremony, I was downstairs in the house I had purchased 2 years earlier, the one she decorated and treated as hers, preparing a surprise breakfast spread for her bridal morning. Cinnamon brioche French toast, imported preserves she loved, dark roast coffee steeping slowly. I even carved strawberries into little hearts like some fool who believed romance could be handcrafted. I remember balancing the tray carefully as I walked toward the staircase, feeling proud of the quiet devotion in small gestures. That was when I heard her voice drift through the partially closed bedroom door upstairs, thick with champagne and mischief, amplified on speakerphone. She was laughing in that exaggerated way she used with her closest friends, the one that suggested secrets were being exchanged. I paused on the 3rd step when I heard another man's name, Adrian, a name I recognized from early stories about her 20s, a relationship she described as wild but immature. I hadn't thought of him in years. I told him to come by tomorrow afternoon, she said between giggles. I went through all that trouble waxing for him, so he better not flake again. The room on the other side erupted in shrill laughter from her bridesmaids. Someone asked if I knew. She answered instantly, "Please. Marcus will be distracted with his trainers and whatever nonsense his brother planned. I'll have my nostalgia moment, then we'll smile for photos and everyone will think it's a fairy tale." The tray in my hands felt suddenly weightless and impossibly heavy at the same time. Butter was sliding off the warm toast. My mind tried to reject what my ears were delivering, like a processor refusing corrupted data. This was the woman who cried when I proposed under string lights on a cliffside overlook. The woman who said loyalty was her highest value, and she was casually planning an intimate reunion with a former lover hours before marrying me. I didn't storm in. I didn't confront her. I stood there long enough to hear them transition from discussing body hair to cocktail themes. Then I walked back down slowly, placed the untouched breakfast on the marble counter, and watched the strawberries bleed into the syrup. I have always believed that emotion is information, but action is power. So instead of exploding, I began moving. The first call went to my attorney, Gerald Whitaker, who had drafted our franchise expansion agreements and the prenuptial contract Vanessa had insisted we formalize for transparency. I told him to activate the infidelity intent clause immediately and initiate protective measures before sunrise. He asked if I was certain. I said I was. The second call was to my property security company to schedule an emergency rekey and digital access reset at dawn. I authorized triple overtime. The third was to the event coordinator overseeing the ceremony venue, voicemail only. Cancel everything. Invoice legal counsel. Do not contact Vanessa under any circumstances. After that, I accessed our shared financial dashboard and froze the joint planning account pending review. I transferred critical documents from the cloud drive she had administrative access to and removed her permissions. I texted my operations director to prepare for temporary absence messaging across all studio channels. Every move was calm, methodical. By 11:18 p.m. I had packed a duffel bag, left my engagement ring on the dresser beside her sleeping form, and stepped out into the night without a note. No explanation. No argument. Silence is sometimes louder than fury. I drove to my longtime friend Dominic Hale's condo across town. We've known each other since we were 19, back when protein shakes were a luxury and ambition was our only currency. He opened the door half awake, but the second he saw my expression, he stepped aside without question. Inside, I told him everything, the overheard conversation, the laughter, the casual cruelty of it. He listened without interrupting, jaw tightening progressively. When I finished, he exhaled hard and admitted something that made the air even heavier. About 8 months earlier, Vanessa had approached him at one of our studio holiday gatherings while I was speaking with a supplier. She cornered him in a hallway, complimented him in ways that crossed lines, placed her hand on his chest, and implied she sometimes felt underappreciated by my focus on expansion. He shut it down immediately. He never told me because she backed off and pretended nothing happened. He didn't want to fracture my happiness if he misread it. I sat there absorbing that second betrayal layered atop the first. It reframed every memory. After my divorce 6 years prior, a marriage that collapsed under the weight of my obsession with growth, Vanessa had seemed like alignment, not distraction. Now it felt like I had been an investment to her, not a partner. At 6:42 the next morning, Vanessa woke up alone in a house that no longer responded to her. I know the exact time because the security system logs every code attempt. She tried calling me repeatedly. My number routed directly to a recorded message I had updated at 2:03 a.m. stating plainly that the ceremony had been canceled and all further communication must go through legal counsel. When she went downstairs expecting apologies or explanations, she found instead a formal notice beside a business card and a short handwritten line. Access revoked. Personal items will be delivered within 72 hours. The engagement ring rested inside its velvet box like evidence. She attempted the front door only to discover the lock no longer recognized her key. Her father arrived later with a spare, equally useless. By then the event vendors had already been notified through counsel, and deposits totaling tens of thousands were documented. Meanwhile, our studio's public page posted a neutral statement announcing my brief leave for personal reasons, while assuring members operations would continue uninterrupted. Supportive messages began flooding in within hours. Monday morning brought the second wave. Vanessa arrived at the flagship studio expecting to salvage normalcy. Instead, she was directed into a conference room where our human resources director informed her that her employment was terminated effective immediately due to potential conflicts of interest and reputational risk. She was an at-will employee. Severance equivalent to 3 weeks was offered. Security escorted her out professionally. Staff avoided eye contact. It wasn't vindictive, it was procedural. Later that day, a 12-second clip from her bachelorette call circulated in local fitness circles, not released by me, but captured by one of the women present. In it, her voice bragged about inviting Adrian and preparing herself physically for him. Context didn't matter, tone did. The clip spread rapidly. By Tuesday afternoon, the narrative was fixed in public opinion. Meanwhile, I met with Gerald to initiate formal financial recovery, per the prenup's explicit terms covering intent of infidelity, reputational damage, and recoverable event expenditures. Her former partner, the man she risked everything for, reportedly distanced himself immediately. I learned this later through mutual acquaintances. He had never intended permanence. He enjoyed proximity to chaos. Vanessa, now unemployed and relocated to her parents' home, received documentation outlining wedding losses, projected brand impact mitigation costs, and legal enforcement measures. The total exposure exceeded $140,000 before negotiation. The prenuptial contract she once joked about became binding reality. Evidence included archived communications she assumed were deleted. Digital footprints rarely disappear entirely. Her attorney eventually advised settlement to avoid greater litigation expense. A payment structure was proposed and later accepted, reducing the amount in exchange for non-disparagement and permanent no-contact provisions. During that same period, membership inquiries at our studios unexpectedly increased. Clients expressed respect for decisiveness. They valued boundaries. My absence lasted 10 days before I returned to the main location to resume training sessions. The routine grounded me. Discipline restores equilibrium faster than rumination. Dominic later introduced me to his cousin Alina, a pediatric rehabilitation specialist who worked with adolescent athletes recovering from injury. Our first interaction was unremarkable in the best way: no performance, no manipulation, no strategic charm, just conversation. It was disorienting at first to engage without subtext. Peace often feels unfamiliar after volatility. 3 months after the canceled ceremony, I donated the majority of what would have been spent on the wedding reception to a youth strength development initiative partnered with our studios. The announcement was modest, but it resonated. Children who otherwise lacked structured training access received equipment and coaching scholarships. The narrative shifted from scandal to contribution. Vanessa relocated out of state shortly after finalizing settlement terms, seeking anonymity. I did not inquire about her circumstances. Closure had already occurred the night I chose silence over spectacle. Nearly a year later, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address containing an apology. She acknowledged chasing validation from men who offered intensity over integrity. She mentioned therapy, accountability, regret. I read it once, then archived it. Apologies can recognize harm, but they do not reverse consequences. When Alina asked if it affected me, I answered honestly, not in the way it once would have. Betrayal clarified something essential. Stability is not built by passion alone, but by character demonstrated when no one is watching. The night before my wedding taught me that listening to discomfort early prevents devastation later. I lost a ceremony. I kept my foundation, and sometimes that is the greater victory. The months that followed did not unfold with dramatic confrontations or cinematic revenge, but with something far more enduring structure. My mornings returned to their disciplined rhythm: 4:45 a.m. alarm, black coffee, 40 minutes of mobility work before the first client arrived. The studios thrived not because of the scandal, but because systems were strong long before it. Trainers showed up. Programs delivered results. Community deepened. I invested more time mentoring junior coaches, tightening operational protocols, expanding corporate wellness partnerships that had been sitting in proposal drafts for nearly a year. Focus became my therapy. I realized how much emotional bandwidth I had unknowingly been allocating to maintaining Vanessa's moods, soothing insecurities, and balancing my ambition against her need for constant reassurance. Without that undercurrent, my energy redirected cleanly into growth. Within 6 months, we opened a 5th performance facility in a neighboring district, something I had delayed during wedding planning. The launch weekend exceeded projections by 22%. I stood in the center of that new training floor watching members move through circuits under bright industrial lights, and it struck me how close I had come to legally entangling my life with someone who viewed commitment as flexible entertainment. The contrast between what I built and what she gambled felt stark, not triumphant, just clarifying. Alina's presence developed gradually, almost imperceptibly. She did not rush definitions or future planning conversations. She asked questions that required reflection rather than reaction. When I spoke about expansion strategy, she listened with curiosity rather than competition. When I admitted my previous marriage failed partly because I equated provision with presence, she didn't weaponize the confession. She simply said awareness is a better foundation than denial. That sentence lingered. We spent evenings cooking uncomplicated meals in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I once carved strawberries into symbolic shapes for someone else. The space no longer felt haunted by memory, because memory had been replaced by evidence of who stayed steady without theatrics. Alina met Dominic and my senior staff without trying to impress them. She volunteered at the youth program without broadcasting it online. Stability, I learned, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself through grand gestures. It accumulates through consistent alignment between words and actions. Financially, the settlement payments from Vanessa began arriving on schedule through automated transfer. I never looked at them as victory installments. They were simply enforcement of an agreement she once insisted upon. Gerald handled all communication through intermediaries. The non-contact clause functioned effectively. On the rare occasion I wondered what she might be feeling, it was abstract, detached from longing. I heard through industry channels that she struggled to re-establish credibility in her new city after the video clip followed her digitally. Reputation, once fractured publicly, rarely resets completely in professional ecosystems built on trust. There were rumors she took contract-based marketing work under a different surname. I did not verify them. My responsibility was forward momentum, not retrospective monitoring. The lesson was internal. Charm is not character, and attraction is not alignment. That distinction reshaped how I evaluated every relationship moving forward, personal and professional alike. At the one-year mark of what would have been our anniversary, I scheduled a strategic retreat for my executive team instead of marking the date privately. We reviewed performance metrics, community outreach impact, and long-term acquisition possibilities. During a break, one of my trainers, a former collegiate athlete, thanked me for modeling boundaries. He said watching me handle the canceled wedding without public mudslinging shifted how he viewed self-respect. That comment resonated more than any supportive social media message ever could. Influence is rarely about speeches, it's about decisions observed. Later that evening, Alina and I took a quiet walk along the waterfront near my home. She asked if that date carried weight. I considered the question carefully before answering. It carried information, I said. A reminder that instincts deserve earlier attention. She nodded, squeezing my hand gently, not demanding deeper sentiment. That was her way, presence without pressure. Professionally, I began integrating relationship integrity workshops into our leadership development track for senior staff. Not romantic advice, but decision-making under emotional stress. I spoke candidly, without nomming Vanessa, about the cost of ignoring red flags because outcomes appear inconvenient. I emphasized that delayed confrontation compounds damage. Attendance was voluntary, participation exceeded expectations. It became clear that betrayal, in various forms, is a shared human experience, yet few discuss it openly in high-performance environments. By contextualizing my experience as data rather than drama, I reclaimed the narrative entirely. Pain transformed into policy. Personal misjudgment evolved into organizational wisdom. The studios became not only centers for physical conditioning, but spaces where accountability was normalized. Alina eventually moved into my home 18 months after the canceled ceremony, not because of urgency, but because practicality and comfort aligned naturally. We renovated the upstairs office into a shared workspace so she could review patient programming from home when needed. The bedroom door, the same door where I once overheard laughter that fractured illusion, was replaced during remodeling. Not symbolically, just structurally outdated. Yet I noticed the subtle psychological closure in that replacement. Environments carry memory, but they also accept redesign. The first time Alina hosted dinner there for her colleagues, the house felt fully inhabited by the present rather than shadowed by the past. I watched her move through the kitchen confidently, aware that peace is not loud but unmistakable. 2 years after the event that nearly altered my trajectory, I received confirmation from Gerald that Vanessa had completed her final settlement payment ahead of schedule after negotiating a lump sum consolidation loan. The matter was legally closed in entirety. I signed the final release acknowledgement without ceremony. When Dominic asked how it felt, I searched for something profound and found nothing dramatic. It felt complete. That was all. Completion is underrated. People often chase emotional climaxes when resolution itself is enough. That evening, I trained a group of scholarship athletes preparing for regional qualifiers. Their focus, hunger, and gratitude dwarfed any residual bitterness I might have entertained. Perspective compresses personal grievance into manageable scale. Alina and I eventually married in a small private ceremony attended by fewer than 30 people. No spectacle, no elaborate staging. We drafted a prenuptial agreement as well, this time mutually constructed, transparent, devoid of hidden subtext. Not as armor, but as clarity. There was no laughter behind closed doors, no secret invitations extended under intoxicated bravado. There was steadiness. When I stood beside her exchanging vows, I did not feel the adrenaline spike I once associated with romance. I felt grounded, certain. That difference mattered more than fireworks ever could. Commitment anchored in calm carries more durability than commitment fueled by drama. Occasionally, someone new joining our membership community will mention having heard about that story from years back. The details have blurred with time, as they should. I never correct embellishments or add nuance. It belongs to history, not identity. If there is a legacy from that chapter, it is not that I canceled a wedding hours before it began. It is that I chose decisive boundaries over public confrontation, growth over grievance, and contribution over retaliation. The youth program we funded now operates in 3 districts, serving hundreds of adolescents annually. That impact outlives any scandal. When I walk through our facilities and see teenagers lifting with proper form under coaches we trained, I recognize how close I came to entangling resources and attention in prolonged emotional litigation instead of community expansion. If I revisit that night in memory, the tray in my hands, the laughter filtering through a door slightly ajar, I no longer feel anger. I feel gratitude for interruption. Had I not paused on those steps, had the door been fully closed, had the timing been slightly different, I might have proceeded into a legally binding union built on concealed instability. Sometimes revelation arrives harshly but mercifully. My life did not collapse, it recalibrated. What I thought was humiliation became filtration. What I feared would damage my reputation strengthened it, and what I believed was love revealed itself as negotiation disguised as affection. In the end, nothing dramatic was required to move forward, just a decision made quietly at 11:18 p.m., a few phone calls, and the discipline to let consequences unfold without theatrics. Everything since has been built on that moment of clarity.